Chicago Transit Authority. I was always a bit confused by the band Chicago. In the early 70s we had an early evening rock show on Capital Radio hosted by Nicky Horn. It was called Your Mother Wouldn't Like It. It seemed to have a fairly limited playlist, but it did often play 25 or 6 to 4, an amazingly catchy yet savagely hard-rocking single by Chicago. I would also occasionally hear their version of Stevie Winwood's song I Am a Man, which had been a hit for the Spencer Davis Group. This was also a monster of a track with horns and seriously distorted heavy lead guitar. On the other hand, Radio 1 would play middle-of-the-road soft rock songs by Chicago like If You Leave Me Now. It was only recently when I watched a documentary about Chicago on Amazon Prime that I realised how the death of Terry Kath, their lead guitarist and leading light, had led to a change into a much softer and more commercial direction, spearheaded by their bass player Peter Cetera. I watched quite a lot of ranking videos on YouTube and I learnt that the first 3 albums are the ones to go for, and of those the first one is probably the best. They were originally called Chicago Transit Authority, but after this album they became just Chicago, following a threat of legal action by the real Chicago Transit Authority. So their second album is called Chicago, but the third is called Chicago 3. All the following albums are numbered. Chicago Transit Authority is a great album. It is like they found themselves with a guitars, bass, drums and keyboards band and a horn section, and took the best of every kind of music that had ever been performed by that combination of musicians. Elements of Stax soul, with a bit of bassy and Ellington jazz swing, the percussion and fiery lead guitar of Santana, and the funk of James Brown, and the catchy brassy bits of Blood, Sweat and Tears. There are some fantastic songs on this album that you will be humming for days. There are fancy grooves, there are the kind of horn riffs you might have heard on Dexy's Midnight Runners or Earth, Wind and Fire songs, and crazy fuzzbox Hendrix-influenced lead guitar. It does not have 25 or 6 to 4, which is on Chicago's second album. What would have been the final side on vinyl starts with a sample of crowds protesting the Vietnam War and chanting "The whole world's watching," reminding us that the late 60s were a time with much to protest about. Chicago Transit Authority by the band that were to become Chicago.